Hey everyone, we're pleased to announce that this episode of the 84 Million podcast is brought to you by our friends at Luxfolio. Inspired by Bitcoin's success as a corporate treasury asset, the team at Luxfolio is pioneering the Litecoin treasury strategy as the very first publicly traded Litecoin treasury company. Confident in Litecoin as a hard, scarce, and sound digital currency, Luxfolio is proving that digital silver is now institutional grade. With a robust Litecoin balance sheet, Luxfolio is committed to actively supporting the Litecoin ecosystem, collaborating with developers, miners, media, and others, promoting further Litecoin adoption. Luxfolio is setting the standard for Litecoin adoption at the corporate level. Learn more at luxfolio.com, luxxfolio.com. When it comes to mining, pools matter. This is why we recommend POWERPOOL. POWERPOOL is a mining pool built by miners to maximize profits. If you're mining from home or have a larger scaled operation, use POWERPOOL for the best payouts. POWERPOOL supports SHA-256, X11, Blake 2S, EagleSong, K-Heavy Hash, and of course our favorite, S-CRYPT for Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bellscoin, and others. Mining with POWERPOOL is easy with its simple user interface, and the platform has all the reporting exports that you're looking for. PowerPool typically charges a 1% fee, but if you use the 84 million link in the show notes, you will pay less than 1%, which is excellent. So sign up, point your machines, and start mining with PowerPool for lower fees and better payouts. Cheers, happy mining. Hello and welcome to the 84 Million podcast. Today we have as our guest Raphael Yaegar, who we also know as FlippiFi or Flippin Finance. Let me give him an introduction. Raphael is a video maker who runs the Flippin Finance page on X, crypto entertainment, and Gen Z's financial media. He's based in Nigeria, and he can be found on X again at FlippiFi. Welcome to the show, Raphael. Good to have you.
Yeah, great to thanks. It's an honor to be here, Kyle. I've looked up to this for the better part of the better part of the last 1 month now. So like I've been giddy. I've told everybody that I'm coming on this show. To my mom, my siblings, my everybody. So yeah, so it's an honor.
Well, it's great to have you, and tell them all I say hello. So we're glad to have Flippy on the show, and maybe
Yeah, sure.
maybe that's exactly where we start, is just kind of tell us your story. I think I started paying attention when you were doing the free master campaign, which I really liked. And but you've been on social media for longer than that, right? So just kind of tell us about you, and what's your story?
Okay, so is it my personal story or my story in relation to crypto?
Both. Whatever you want to share.
Okay, so all right. So I'm Raphael, and I'm a video maker, a content creator, a singer. I'm literally everything media and entertainment, right? So particularly my the way I got introduced to crypto and cryptocurrencies was I worked in an MLM company with my mom, and it was Edmark. So it was a normal MLM company. We sold product and just all of that. And so they decided that they wanted to launch a cryptocurrency called Edcoin. So it was like a real world assets type of project where the Edcoins could be used to purchase something in their Edmark City, which was like this multi-billion-dollar complex we're trying to do. And so that was my first introduction to crypto. And a thing or two happened, and they didn't actually end up listing the coin on any exchange. And that infuriated me, and that sort of made me go deeper into what crypto is as a whole. And that was how I figured out what Ethereum was, what Bitcoin was. And it just sort of like became the snowball into this new world that I couldn't intuitively understand, but like I sort of understood that there was like money real being traded online about this thing. And that sparked my curiosity. And I remember around the first time I bought Ethereum, this was sub $200. I bought sub $200 Ethereum, but very, very cheap Ethereum back then. So that was sort of my my way of like diverting and like getting into the space. And then that was also 2020. I mean, it was pandemic, and quite literally every single young adult in the country was like locked up at home and like jobless and just like with our phones. And of course, those are the type of things that like you get exposed to when you put these conditions together. And it became that. And it was also the time when DeFi, we would track the DeFi volume and ETH on CurveFi and all that. So exciting times. I'm really lucky that that was my introduction, because I literally watched the entire DeFi and like NFT space just like come into life. And that was a very beautiful way for me to get into the space. And I worked on a couple NFT projects and all that, and I've just been very interested in the space and like gradually learning, right? Because the beautiful thing about this industry we are is it's a story being written, right? There's no course or manual that is set in stone. It's a constantly evolving technology, and we are the ones writing the story of what will be studied about this technology. And it's been a very beautiful experience for me so far. So yeah, that's basically my story about how I got involved in crypto and all that.
And permissionlessness. You set up a page, you're self-motivated, you're going crazy on social media, putting out a bunch of content and going through leaps and bounds, I think, to put out your content. I'd love if you could share that with us. Some of the folks that I've talked to shared a little bit about what you go through to get your content out. And can you share any of that with us? Kind of the behind the scenes?
Of course. So first things first, I just recently moved apartments because I was having a little problem with where I was. But generally where I was before making the Freemaster, I mean, you notice that it's not the same background as the Freemaster video. So we had a serious transformer problem. And the thing about Nigeria is we don't have 24-hour electricity. We don't have that. And so to compound that problem, we had our transformer, which like supplies the electricity to like homes. It got broken down, destroyed, and we didn't have electricity for months. And every single night I would have to power my gasoline generator. We call it petrol over here, but I know y'all call it gas, so I'm just gonna call it gas. Freedom words. So yeah, my gasoline power generator, and I turned that on every night from around 8 p.m. to around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So I make the videos around 10 to 11, take a little rest, and then start editing, because I'm someone who has to like edit right as it's happening, because I don't know if it's ADHD or what, but if I let it go, I'm not going back to it. I'm just not going back to it. So I end up editing the videos, and then I go to bed around 3 a.m. And that was really how it is. And I loved it because like, the thing about the Free Master Challenge is that I am a huge fan of Master. I don't know. I know it's not generally well liked by most people not by most people, by many people in the community, right? I see a lot of people who keep trash talking him, but I have deep respect for what Master was doing, because I never saw any objective reason to think that Litecoin had a serious fundamental value until I saw his network value model. And, it was just crazy model I see is talking about Litecoin going to 30,000. And, it sparked the question of, is that even possible? And that question was what started a deep dive. And I had to go check for myself. I had to go, look at the, the daily transactions happening on chain. I had to go look at the, the hash rate and every single thing about Litecoin. And then it became clear to me that, in fact, Litecoin does, deserve some seriously much higher valuation. So Master's post sparked that conversation in me, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who's had this same effect from seeing Master's post. So when his account got taken down, I'm like, nah, hell no, I'm not gonna let this happen. I'm not gonna let this slide. I have to come fight for Master. And that was the point of the challenge. I just wanted to put out I wanted the challenge to go for much longer than it went, and then I encountered so I couldn't continue. But the idea was just to put up a lot of videos outside. So I know someone on the X support team is just gonna see one random episode and who's this insane guy? Why does he make this video? Then so they can probably go review the ban and hopefully lift it. And that was my idea behind why I started that. And that's it. So that's a bit of an an insight to how what I go through trying to just put these videos out, and also how what made me start the free master challenge as well.
Yeah, a lot of respect to you for using, you know, somewhat, I'll call it scarce resources. You know, if you don't have 24/7 electricity, you're using the electricity you have and you're devoting it to this. And it sounds like you're taking a good chunk of sleeping time out of this too. So you're giving a lot of you to create this, and we can see it, but I think we take it for granted. You know, we just see the end product, but we don't know about production. We just see, oh,
Yeah.
you know, this guy's online, he's got a studio, he's putting out this content, he's part of the community, and we're glad for all of that. But I think to see the behind the scenes is really important because you're putting in a lot of work to create this content, and you're not stopping. So that's good. In terms of the master content, of course, I hope he's free too. I'm still looking forward to his account being restored. And you know, he was a guest on the show. I think he's been encouraging to a lot of different people in the space, encouraging them to do different things, whether it's with NFTs or on chain, off chain, media, whatever. He's a big advocate of Litecoin, and unfortunately, some people attacked him on, I guess, his parodying at one point, and that's, I think, how they got to take him down. But I don't entirely know. But either way, yes, free master. We still want a free master BTC
Free
LTC
master.
on X. Well, let's talk a little bit about your environment. So you're in Nigeria. I've never been there. Can you tell? But you're talking also about crypto, and having known about crypto for several years, having been involved in, I guess, near token launches, which you weren't too happy with. But either way, so there's some sort of culture happening where you're living in your country with crypto. There's obviously an appetite for it. Or do we see a lot of your type, you know, Flippy, I'm all in, walking down the streets, or are you more the anomaly, kind of the outlier that says, hey, I'm not really into crypto, but most of the people I know aren't? I mean, where's Nigeria in terms of crypto adoption, and what are they adopting?
So you see, I'm a serious anomaly, honestly, and like to a very great extent, I come off as very strange to my friends because like since 2020, 85 to 90% of everything I've ever talked about is crypto related. I don't think I can recall anything I don't think I can recall talking about anything particularly as much as I do crypto, and particularly Litecoin. Like very much every single person who knows me or who's known me over the past like 3 years, they have heard every single thing there is to hear about Litecoin because I just don't shut up about it. And I'm someone who, I rally behind something when I really believe in it, and I really believe in Litecoin, and so that's the push. So I don't know any other person that is like me in Nigeria. However, there are people that actually care about the space. I mean, this cryptocurrencies and Web3 has absolutely changed the lives of lots of people in Nigeria. I mean, we do not have access to capital markets over here, right? We do not have access to indexes and proper stock market, and inflation is dealing with us in proportions that like most Westerners will never understand. Like I know people who were very, very well off. They were wealthy when I was much younger. They did not lose any significant opportunity. I mean, they pretty much stayed in the same opportunity grade, but they are now barely surviving just because of inflation. And, these type of things are the things that like cryptos really help, alleviate in Nigeria. And like we have more and more people embracing it. I mean, of course, the vast majority are embracing it for the number go up technology of it. But hey, it's nice. And I see the stats a lot of time ranking Nigeria as around either the second or third country in the world when it comes to crypto adoption, and I think that's cool. It's a growing culture here, and it is very significant to like most people, because it's pretty much one of the only ways that we feel like we can have a hope of securing a future for ourselves.
Yeah, if we had sound money, we wouldn't need crypto. I think I've said that before on the show. I mean, that's the baseline. Yeah, you could use the digital art kind of implementations of blockchain, sure, but the primary purpose is money, right? And I think we've lost a lot of that. But like you're describing the exact reason why Bitcoin, for example, was kind of really advocated in the early days, like bank the unbanked.
Yeah.
Not everybody has all this stuff that the first world has. And a lot of the world's money, including the first world money, I mean, we're in the United States here, right? Texas. And so we use the US dollar. And I know that's global, but even though maybe it's a conservative monetary policy, it's still very inflationary. So all of the money's bad in terms of fiat, at least in 2025. So crypto does change that. I'll say Litecoin fixes this. And you're seeing that in your country. So interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. I don't know much about your banking system, to be honest. I mean, is it like sovereign in terms of like, or is it central bank? I mean, how can you tell us anything about your banking system in Nigeria? We don't have to go on and on about it. Just
interest rates are 27%.
Okay.
Yeah, you can imagine that. That's the CBN interest rates. And so we have a year-on-year inflation that's around 20% plus. And the banking system is generally very restrictive, because I don't know. There's just this thing in Nigeria that it's a general culture against like young people succeeding. It's a very serious problem. God forbid you are young and you're doing well. You're gonna be a target of some thing that I just can't explain. So, we see that a lot. And one of the ways that people get attacked is through the banking system. So yeah, it's not a sovereign banking system. Of course, we have independent banks. I mean, most banks are like private entities and they operate independent of the government. But of course, there's this far-reaching government oversight. And the unfortunate thing about Nigeria is that as much as I love this country, I cannot pretend as though the problems we're facing with corruption is not a thing, because it actually is. I mean, it's one thing to have a country where like there are people who are nefarious and like who just want to mess you up, and it's another thing where you have the government pretty much doing the same thing. I mean, a lot of times when government is going for things that you might consider enforcement, they're just going to end up extorting the person. And it's a very strange dynamic. And a lot of the ways you're doing this is, of course, through the banking system. So, yeah, it's a really strange situation. And of course, crypto and sound money, like Litecoin and Bitcoin, is our way of like, fighting back and like gaining back our own personal sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Appreciate that. It's interesting. An interesting comment about the interest rates. So part of me thinks that's a good thing to have high interest rates, because it's like the market value of money, like the fee of money. Give me a minute here. But it's also paired with wild inflation. So because I know in like the 90s we had 7-8% where you actually could save money in a bank and have it appreciate in value, right? You lock money away, it actually gets interest. I mean, we haven't had interest. It's like 0% or less than one fractional percentages, which basically means if you're keeping any value in dollars in a bank, it's eroding every year at the rate of inflation, right? Because we don't have any interest. It's essentially none. It varies if you're in housing or different mortgage types or whatever. It depends what you want to do. But overall, you have to look at the federal funds rate, right? But overall, we've had basically extremely low, non-natural rates of interest over the past few years, and that's been part of the problem. So you have an interesting situation where you have very high interest, but also extremely bad inflation. So, yeah, it sounds like government intervention, and we all have our varieties. And again, we agree that crypto is non-arbitrary. There's only 84 million Litecoin last time I checked in terms of the max supply, 21 million Bitcoin. So they are sounder forms of money. But let's talk about regional, and we're going to keep going with this. This is fun. Regionally, and we're going to go into some Litecoin maybe history here, or maybe just weirdness. But you're relatively close to the Ivory Coast, right? Relatively close. And I know Charlie grew up there. Again, I've not been there. Haven't really heard Charlie share too much about it, to be honest. But what might have he grown up in an environment of? Are you familiar with it? Maybe you've been there. I don't know.
No idea. Kyle, I've only been out of Nigeria once in my life, and that was to Malaysia. And I've not been to any neighboring African countries, and which is one very interesting thing about Africa, right? Africa is a very heterogeneous continent, like where you have like lots and lots of different cultures and traditions and countries that are wildly different from each other. And they fight wars a lot online about who's got better jollof and other things like that. But like, yeah, so that's the thing. So I mean, I personally would not cannot know how the environment might have been for Charlie, but I would assume, based on what I think about them, that it's definitely it definitely would have been a very culture rich uh environment to grow up. Because the thing about Africa is that, like, we might be heterogeneous, but like there's this general thing about, like, most people where we have a deep sense of appreciation for our culture, and like we wear our pride on our chest where we go. So like you know a Ghanaian if you mistakenly call him a Nigerian, and it's like, no, I'm not Nigerian, I'm Ghanaian. So like we wear that pride on our chest, and all of the cultures, different countries, different regions, beautiful. But I just don't have a specific idea of what that might be like.
Okay, so even communication is limited. So you're not really even sure what's going on in the Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I just figured I'd ask. Here's one in your country. Maybe you can help with. Yeah, the Kaduna State, pardon me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Kaduna State, there's a local government area in Nigeria, Kaduna State, called Chikun, Chikun. Sounds like Litecoin Town. How they adopted Litecoin as the official currency there in Chicken.
Well, no.
I'm kidding.
Unfortunately. Unfortunately. But I mean, that's the first time I'm hearing a chicken town. I've never heard that before. And that's the thing. I don't know way too many places in Nigeria. I don't know if that's a strange thing for someone who's Nigerian.
I don't know all the towns in Texas.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. Because like I know Kaduna, and like it's northern, and like they are very nomadic, and it's an Islamist state, not in the normal sense of Islamist state, but like it's Islam that is the dominant religion there. And so you have Sharia, and you have all of these other things that might not be very friendly with the adoption and implementation of crypto. But I'm sure like that there are lots of people there who generally are adopting cryptocurrencies, maybe for the number go up technology of it. So I think I could say with a heavy bit of confidence that they should have some sort of like adoption level of crypto.
Maybe we can put it on the map and feel like, set that up as a goal, get some like messengers to go in and get Chicken to be the first official government to adopt Litecoin. But maybe it doesn't sound very realistic.
That'll be cool.
Either way, just having fun with you.
So cool.
Maybe we talk about your videos. It's been a few weeks since you put anything out. I know you've been moving, you've been setting up, converting from your generator system to solar power, and you've been doing a lot of work at home. Well, your last video on July 21st, I think that's the last one you put up, you wrote, years of underperformance have convinced even some of the strongest Litecoin core believers that we can't go much higher. You also noted there's a profound mismatch, and that's your quote, in terms of market cap and proof of work currencies, again, highlighting Litecoin. So tell us more about this. Where do you see Litecoin going? And now we'll kind of shift the topic to Litecoin until we end.
Yeah. So, this is going to be a very interesting one, because this is going to go into the way I generally perceive Litecoin. So, first of all, I think the reason why most of crypto does not see the value of Litecoin right now is because most people are stuck with project thinking, right? So I see this in two ways. There are two things about a crypto. There is the blockchain, and there's the money being transmitted on it. And there are way too many people that are focused on the blockchain, and way too little people that are focused on the money that is being transmitted on it. Now, one thing a lot of people in this space that I see nowadays don't understand is that the world is not lacking fast ways to transmit money, right? What the world is lacking is good money that can replace the one that we have, the current monetary system that we have, that is broken, inflationary, and is almost a guarantee that whoever is holding it without, being forced to use it in some way or another is going to end up with far less, value for it over time. And so we have so many people who stock just focused on what the blockchain, can do. I mean, Visa already does more than 25,000 transactions per second. So, a blockchain that is transmitting 25,000 transactions per second is not valuable, right? If you're transmitting money that is not good on it. And what would make a money not to be good is, what makes Litecoin good money, right? Litecoin, first of all, is not purpose built. I feel like a lot of people, again, they get caught up in this project thinking that they continue to ask, what is Litecoin used for? Which is very, very, I hate to say it, but lame, because it's like asking, what is US dollars used for? Well, it's not purpose built, right? You have to use it. That's one of the important characteristics of sound money that people don't pay attention to. If you purpose build money, it's a token. It's no longer money, right? It's like when you go to, a casino and then you get given chips at a table, and that token infers value, but out of the casino setting, it does not mean anything. It's not worth anything, right? And so you can have a fancy protocol that is transmitting these tokens within it, but like if it's not built without a specific purpose, it's a token, and it cannot confer the value of inference in the same degree that sound money does. Another property is the fact that like it's fairly distributed, right? And so fair distribution is, we all know it's a very, sacrosanct property of sound money. Every single thing that has been used as money in history had a fair distribution, right? There was a very, agnostic way. I don't know if that's the proper word to use, but there was a very fair way in which people procure these things like gold and silver and copper and calories and whatnot. There was no issuer of these things, they just sort of grew on people, the value that has been inferred by these things. And the only reason we have a system where money is being issued and that money can confer value is because we have money that is backed by governmental might. So it's where people miss the boat on Litecoin, because people are not looking at it very, very well. I think people don't understand what it really means when Charlie says Litecoin is money. And so people are so caught up in the project thinking they're not seeing this. And it's very funny because I feel like every single person who is an altcoin holder, for example, like I personally am heavily invested in altcoins, simply because I don't have enough capital to like Bitcoin majority. I mean, I'm of course trying to do much better for myself, and I don't have like $1 million or like a huge amount of money. And so like, of course, I'm very mostly allocated on altcoins. And I feel like every single person who's allocated in altcoins should have a percentage that money allocated to Litecoin, for the fact that like Litecoin does not face enough competition in its category in the same way that other proof of stake projects will face competition. And what I mean by this ties back to what you said, what you highlighted that I said about proof of work category being severely undervalued, right? What would it take to replace let me use SUI, for example? There's a simple answer for that. Multiverse X. I hate to name call because this is a Litecoin podcast, but I really want to illustrate my point. Now, Multiverse X is a project that I really supported and I really love, and I love your community. But how did they get replaced this cycle, right? To replace a proof of stake, a coin in the top of the rankings, you just need to have a better funded proof of stake coin that is just going to steal all the market share. And your coin from the last cycle that has had all of the, most of the pre-sale investors, gotten out of, and, they've sold their tokens and they have gone straight to the next shiny thing. It really has no way of like becoming relevant in the proof of stake category again. And this is a vicious cycle that is gonna obliterate most things that are proof of stake, and most things just don't have a chance, because after the bear market, the next cycle, you're just gonna have the better funded proof of stake chain replace it, because it's so easy to replace them. You just need raise capital, the whole ICO thing. You're going to pump a lot of the valuations, the whales don't sell, send it to high market cap, and boom, the old one is now a relic of the past. But with proof of work, one interesting reason why it's going to be so difficult to replace Litecoin is because many founders are just too greedy to be able to be in the disposition to replace it, because nobody wants fair distribution. Nobody wants fair distribution. So, because it takes a lot to just allow people to be able to mine with equal chances, right? So for Litecoin to be replaced, you need to have fair distribution. It needs to be, proof of work, consensus model, and it needs to grow from, the ground up in terms of adoption, in terms of, popularity, in terms of integration, and all of this is just so difficult. It's so impossible to achieve. And that is why I believe anybody who's an altcoiner, it doesn't matter if you do not like Litecoin, you should be, positioned in it. Just because Litecoin is always going to be one of the top contenders, if not the top contender for Bitcoins, for capital rotation when it's happening in that niche, because it's always going to be the top dog, in that niche. And that just makes perfect sense, but I don't know why people are not looking at it. And that brings back to, the idea of the fact that proof of work coins, that there's a valuation, the discretion between the top proof of work coin, Bitcoin, and, the rest. And people are not looking at that, because people tell themselves that, proof of work is dead. It's an old technology, and Bitcoin is there just off of first mover's advantage. But Bitcoin is $2.4 trillion and Ethereum is $500 billion. It's been like this for the better part of how long this proof of stake guys have been screaming that it's dead. So how can someone look at Bitcoin, be far and large the most successful, far and large the best, the largest asset in the whole space, and say confidently that proof of work is dead? When people say these things, it comes off to me as strange, because people are very quick to make statements of absolutes in this space, and they don't even pay attention to the fact that we've barely been here. We've not been here 2 decades. There's not enough history for you to be making absolute statements, and most of all, absolutes about proof of work and saying that this is a relic of the past, that it's dead. So the fact that people aren't seeing this is strange, because Bitcoin is a top proof of work asset, $2.4 trillion. And you have the second being Dogecoin at 40 billion or so. For comparison, Ethereum's the top proof of stake asset. It's about 500 billion or so last time I checked, and Solana's close to 100 billion. When you look at that value, discrepancy between the top proof of work, and the second in valuation, and then you do that for proof of stake, that's just too wide of a margin for people to ignore. And my thinking is that, if people just do that ranking, they're not going to see the clear picture, but because not only, it's very easy to just look at that and see, oh, there's a value mismatch. Bitcoin's 2.4 trillion. Dogecoin is next for rotation. But if people can just take the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, proof of work chains and just put them, on a scale of adoption, they're going to see that by far and large, Litecoin stands out. Absolutely. Daily transaction count, transaction volume, network strength growth, community growth, and literally every metric you can actually pay attention to, Litecoin is absolutely dominating. So whenever we're having this value discrepancy in the proof of work niche get filled, it's only logical to assume that Litecoin will be by far the biggest benefactor of this value gap fill whenever it's happening. And that is why I really believe Litecoin is going to, has a very solid shot of getting to the top 3, because again, Litecoin's valuation will be actively traded against the Bitcoin's valuation, which I think most people in crypto are not really paying attention to. They're just going to think, oh, Litecoin's $10 billion now. Why is it going to go all the way to 500 billion? But it's going to be traded directly against Bitcoin's valuation. not the top 100 market cap rankings or whatever most normal people are looking at. And so why people are really paying attention to, something else, they're not really getting the gist of what's happening. And, it's strange that most people are not looking at it, or they see it, they look at the price and then they dismiss it. And that builds my conviction even stronger, because, that's when you're onto something that is actually worthwhile. I'm sorry if I've gone for too long already.
All good. It's good. A lot of place we could go with that. I mean, I think, first of all, I agree with you with the statement about proof of work and the importance and the magnitude of proof of work. In fact, part of the invention of Bitcoin really is the proof of work, right? That's why it's so special.
Yeah.
And of course, Litecoin for S-CRYPT is Bitcoin's SHA, right? So two different algorithms, but they are both proof of work. And of course, that ties into, you mentioned Doge being the largest proof of work by market cap. It's actually free riding off of Litecoin, of course, through auxiliary proof of work. I know you know this. And that's very special too, especially when we're looking at this stuff with Cubic. And I don't want to really go to that right now, but the merge mining
Let's not give them attention.
The merge mining is a strengthening agent in terms of hash rate, joining resources, and having aligned incentives, I guess. And it also makes S-CRYPT much more profitable than running a single coin. For example, SHA-256 for Bitcoin, which most people, unless you're running a BitAxe, you really can't even get close to being competitive there at this stage. And that's a lottery miner. But anyway, I like what you're saying. I think there is something very special about proof of work. I think the folks that dismiss it, it's a form of propaganda. That doesn't mean I think every proof of work coin will be here in 100 years. I don't. Probably some will not. But Bitcoin and Litecoin will be. Unless there's some sort of gigantic world-changing event. And then we're not really talking about anything that has anything to do with this conversation. It would be a totally different world if that were to occur. So yes, I do expect Bitcoin and Litecoin to outlive us as things progress. It is interesting how some of the attacks on proof of work, though, would just take the resources and kind of shift to AI. I mean, that is what Cubic is about to a degree. Again, I don't want to keep energizing that, but it's in the air today. Today is the 8/18. That's where we're recording here, having this conversation. So there's interesting stuff happening. I know proof of work from like the green folks has been attacked over the years. But then there's also the case that, we're using resources better with proof of work. We're harvesting stranded gas, and all sorts of things, probably hydroelectrics, different, wherever we can pull energy from, we can turn it into Bitcoin, turn it into Litecoin. And that's a big incentive to actually put resources that would otherwise be either ignored or totally wasted. So I'm with you with proof of work. Litecoin is S-CRYPT king. It is the S-CRYPT dominant coin. Doge has a bigger name, perhaps. I mean, I'm with Litecoiner, so that's all I think about, right? Litecoin was a top 10 most of its history, though. More than half its history. And you're suggesting it could return to that. I believe it will too. Time will tell. But I like what you're saying. There's a lot of ways we could go with it. But proof of work, in short, is of paramount importance. We should not get rid of it. It is a great use of resources and absolutely foundational to sound money. So anything else you wanted to say on that kind of money? You said it's separating. You said something about separating the money from the chain. I don't think I entirely understood what you meant by that. Do you mean dollars transferred in terms of like nominal value, or what do you mean?
What I mean by separating, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So what I mean by separating the money from the chain is what I said about people focusing on the blockchain and not what is being transmitted on it. And people looking for faster and faster chains and not focusing on the value of the tokenomics, and, the value of the money that has been transmitted on it. And that is why people continue to ask the question about what is Litecoin being used for, because they just don't understand this foundational difference between Litecoin and, Litecoin, Bitcoin, and then something else. And this is how I to just further buttress my point. Litecoin and Bitcoin are money. Ethereum, Solana, and these other things, I view them as infrastructure, right? And infrastructure is great, right? And infrastructure has a token to like power it and all that. But the thing is that you see, these things are not money, right? And they will always be valued directly by how many people are using these infrastructures. And, out of that context, they do not have much value. And that is why I'm not very in line with your vision, right? Because Solana had a very big bet on, the whole Web3 casino thing. And like, without that, what's the value of Solana? And it's the whole thing where Ethereum is also trying to like, tokenize, every single thing on it. But then it continues to face the problem of, well, people are talking about, the Ethereum's finality being too slow, it not being able to handle this and that and then. And these actually pose a very real threat to Ethereum's dominance than most people are actually like accounting for. But like Bitcoin and Litecoin are money. And as long as they continue to grow as money, they have a much more solid foundation and much less points of failure, much less things people can point to and say, oh, this is failure that is, attributed to this, and oh, we're going to just, do it, we're just going to pack up and just ignore them. But you have more of that going on with these infrastructures that have been built. And it's not all of this. I mean, it's not all of these infrastructures that are going to, host the world's finance. I feel like a lot of these are just pie in the sky aspirations. And that is the main thing. One of the main things that makes me so supportive of Litecoin. It's the fact that there is no roadmap, there is no pie in the sky aspirations we're trying to like hook people onto. It's just money, and we get it, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And I love that, and I love the fact that the adoption is growing. When it comes to what it can be used to procure in a real world sense, and not some sort of make-believe infrastructure, that we're going to privately sell, privately allocate tokens around, do some investment, pump the value up, and like, make-believe value. So like, and that's what I really, really appreciate about what Litecoin and Bitcoin are about.
Yeah. And Charlie said that, basically sound money is boring, but you want it to be boring. It's really just supposed to do what it does very, very well. And so Litecoin doesn't have to be exciting to be world-changing technology. But it is exciting. We'll talk about that in a little bit, the other things that are coming kind of with Litecoin and the things that are cropping up around Litecoin. But let's just stick with the money part. We've talked about, kind of in your country, there's demand or a desire to have better money. We're talking specifically about Litecoin. You tweeted, I think yesterday, about stack and spend Litecoin and connect to the true purpose of cryptocurrency. So do you feel, and we sort of alluded to this earlier, but do you feel like the crypto space has lost its way? In other words, that sound money is boring and boring is good, that there's really not much of an appetite for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe the whole crypto space has like gone. It's all now a casino of like a number go up. And like, this is something, this is something I know, this is something most Litecoiners know already. And it's very frustrating because value gets drowned out in the midst of noise, right? And I did not look for, by the way, I don't know, I did not look for Litecoin. Litecoin found me. And that is why I feel like the whole space has lost this way because the whole space is not looking for what they're not asking the questions you're supposed to ask. And the question I asked that brought me to Litecoin was this. Now, I ran a very successful mini business where I helped people fund Forex accounts in 2020, 2021, right? And that was one of the ways that I was able to raise a lot of capital because like back then, crypto was like going very popular in Nigeria. But like very few people knew how to convert Naira to like Bitcoin or Naira to like whatever coin they needed. And, a lot of people wanted the coins, but they were too afraid to use P2P exchanges, right? And I knew how to use P2P exchanges. And like these people don't want to know how to use P2P exchange. Well, that's a business, right? And so, it was also around this time that Forex, companies were coming around because it's pandemic. Lots and lots of like youths are like online trying to make quick money. So like all these forex academies and platforms start popping up, and everybody wants to fund your forex account. And these forex account take Bitcoin, they take Litecoin, but people don't know how to get these things. And so I did my little business, and I would help them convert their cash to a Bitcoin and to Litecoin, and I'd keep my margin, and my margin is usually the profit of the arbitrage that I got from the official exchange rate and whatever was going on the P2P platforms, plus a flat $5 fee. So depending on what the Bitcoin network was doing, it was between a $5 and $10 fee flat. And so Bitcoin started to destroy this business in 2021 when fees started to go up and to the right. So I'd have a lot of times where I literally just break even, and I'll let the transaction go, because like I'm trying to like keep customers, right? I can't be charging them $15 for a transaction. And one day I just figure out that I could use Litecoin, and I don't know, I don't remember exactly if someone asked me for Litecoin or I just figured out to use Litecoin. I can't particularly remember the detail, but I remember when I used it, I was like, oh, this is good. I could send for like way less than $1, and that completely changed the business, right? Because like now I could keep everything affordable, and my profit margins went very up, and I was okay. And that allowed me to also be able to like speculate on other crypto hot projects was going. I mean, I did really good in 2021. And 2022, it all came crashing down. And oh my God, it was horrible. It was horrible for me. It was horrible. The whole Forex thing was coming to an end. It was like, it declined my, margins were down by 95%, because like people got into Forex. Of course, they didn't make a lot of money, so they got burned, and like there was a general exhaustion going on by then. So yeah, the business sort of like went really down under. And also crypto was down. And like I had this project I was supporting. It was a DeFi project, and they decided to launch a governance token that was separate from the original token that they had for the whole thing, and it just tanked the valuation by like 95%. And I spiraled into this deep position of depression in 2022, where I lost my connection to anything at all. And you're the first person I'm telling this, but like it was a very wild time that nothing felt real. I felt like I was in a dream when I was awake, because I had lost all sense of purpose. And I crawled out, back out of this. I had to join my brother in his Forex Academy, sort of worked on a couple of things. Also did sales for him, so I could, try to like get myself back together financially. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in this position where I just didn't want to do anything with crypto, because I was done. And, but it has this way of coming back at you. And I was there. It was first of all me trying to make a few bucks off of, Lunar and Lunk, because like their volatility was like high that period. And just one day, all of a sudden, I just looked at Litecoin, and I'm like, well, Litecoin, you're useful. I use you. Is there any like investment, value to you? Because like the last time I remembered you existed, you were $100. So why are you still $100? Well, everything is down like 99.99%. Why are you still at $100? And that reliability, that resilience of Litecoin, that this thing refused to die when every other thing is literally dying. I mean, the one project I was holding at that time, when it was around $500, Litecoin was around 100 and something bucks. And by then it was like $25, and Litecoin's still about $100. And I'm like, I had to open the chart, and immediately I opened the chart. I showed it to my brother. I'm like, something is going on here that doesn't make sense. And that was my idea. I said, something is going on here that doesn't make sense. This chart, you can't tell me this is the chart of a project that is dead. Mm-hmm. You cannot tell me that. You can't tell me this asset is dead. There is some wicked, brutal, multi-billion-dollar accumulation that is happening. And this coin is anything but that. And that was what I told him. And funny enough, I told him that in a few years, we're going to see institutions come out to like integrate Litecoin into broader, commodity classes and integrations and all that. Fidelity, IRA, ETFs. Yeah. I saw this thing just by looking at the chat, because the chart just screamed, sustainability. And I just remembered myself like, I'm like, I don't want to do anything with anybody's roadmap anymore. I'm done with roadmaps. I don't like when I listen to Charlie speak. A lot of people say, "Oh, Charlie is not a salesman. He doesn't market Litecoin." Well, that's what I love about Charlie.
Yeah.
I love that everything that I believe and think about Litecoin was on my own volition. I came to the conclusion myself. I'm not following some ultra positive, ultra change the world, ultra revolutionary vision by some, founder that is trying to like get me to continue to hold his coins by virtue of vague words and vague massive promises of probably sending ourselves straight to Uranus and building like a little project camp there and whatever, and I just like that. I appreciate it that I hear him talk. And he doesn't shield Litecoin. He's just like, hey man, use Litecoin. It's good money. And that is what I want to hear from the person that is like, that created this money. You couldn't have this person say anything better than what he says. And I feel like the right class of people are seeing that and appreciating that. But the only people that are not appreciating it are the number go up people. And if everybody can simply reconnect with why this whole space was built in the first place, we were to invent money, we were reinventing money, then everybody will connect to the true path of what it was built for. And if people choose not to do it, I mean, again, Litecoin will be here in 10 years, Litecoin will be here in 20 years. Most projects will be dead.
Yeah.
And if that is when they want to see the light, I am afraid they're not going to get the valuations we're getting now. It's sad, right? Because it's just things that you can't, you understand it, right? You internalize it because you see it, but you can't copy what's in your mind and paste it in another person's mind. But all you can do is your best effort to try to let them see it. And if they don't see it, that's fine.
Yeah. I know your story about kind of entering the space and then going into all the altcoins, getting burnt, and then kind of coming back to the simpler projects, namely Litecoin, because it is reliable and it is very special along the exact points that you described. But yeah, you had an extreme form of it, but I think more people will have that experience. I don't think that's going away in the space. It might even be getting worse. The different sorts of pump and dumps and rug pulls and everything else. Then you're like, what is all this? And you should leave it. You should let all of that go. If you're here for the purpose of money, you've got it. And that's really all you need, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. That's why I believe in Litecoin. Even back forever ago when I discovered Litecoin second to Bitcoin was still really functioning as a money back then. And then like, oh, Litecoin's just like Bitcoin. But then you start to use it. And I think you mentioned that too. It's like once you use it and see the difference in the user experience between Bitcoin and Litecoin, there's no replace by feed, none of this other stuff. Of course, we have MWeb, I'm preaching, but it's a great experience. Whether you're in Core or in your cold wallet, I mean, it's everywhere. Whether you're in the mobile app, got a bunch of those. It just works really, really well. It's really good money. And I agree it is an institutional grade asset. It is a commodity. I agree with that. What are your thoughts on kind of these institutions, the treasury companies? We've got two of them. We've got Luxfolio. They're actually a show sponsor. We've got MEIP or May Pharma. Then you've got all the ETFs kind of in line for October, where as far as we know, we'll get approval. It's the last one. And I see zero reason on merits to decline those, seeing that Bitcoin was approved. What are your thoughts on the institutions?
So personally, I feel like it's a very good thing because it signals to the world that Litecoin is actually in the same conversation that Bitcoin is at. And this is something that I really appreciate, right? Because I mean, Luxfolio is one company I can admire because they based the whole treasury company thing on Litecoin. I feel like what Luxfolio did is much more courageous than what Sailor did, because Sailor and Strategy, they went for the industry leader. Of course, it's a strategy that's going to work, pun intended, because you just go for the industry leader. It's so easy to root for the winner. Mm-hmm. But what is not easy and what takes courage is to root for the underdog that is suppressed by whatever reasons we do not understand. That takes courage. That takes balls. And they have the balls and the audacity to actually root for us this much. And that is very noble and that's very respectful. And I really deeply have a strong regard for Luxfolio. And also May Farmer, I think like, that statement volume acquisition that they made was so good because I feel like that is now steering the conversation, towards the direction of Litecoin. It's bringing the conversation to Litecoin, and the little correction that 21 shares that they made about the whole Litecoin misinformation, that is a signal that these people are paying attention now. They are. And it's almost like they're scared to move first, but like they are paying attention. And that's why one of the things these are the things that make me really appreciate this institution. And the best part is these guys are sweeping the bottom, right? I cannot say if Bitcoin is topped, but it sure as hell is not in the bottom. The bottom was 15,000 for this cycle, right? Litecoin is at a generational bottom, an 8-year bullish consolidation. Switch the log chart, switch the logarithmic chart. It's the most beautiful thing you can see as far as TA is concerned. I've not seen anything like this in my life. It's like Picasso. No, for real. And so you look at that and you see these people are accumulating the bottom. Posterity is going to tell well on them, right? Posterity is going to judge them very, very well. And so I'm very optimistic. I'm a huge supporter of Luxfolio. I'm a huge supporter of May Farmer, and the beautiful thing is Thumbs Up included Litecoin in their treasury as well.
Yeah. Yes.
On its own merits. And they're coming harder and harder to ignore us.
And the 21 shares kind of linguistic adjustment in their description of Litecoin, that was community driven. That was done on X. So
yes,
that's the Litecoin community speaking up. Yep. Very good. We applaud that. And they actually changed the language in their description of Litecoin and basically removing it. I guess it was described as a more of a direct fork rather than a code fork, if you will, because it is not an actual fork. No chain ever split.
Yes.
Bitcoin has its own Genesis block, has its own algorithm. Litecoin has its own Genesis block, has its own algorithm. So that was a big win. I think that was really, really good. And again, kind of
pretty huge.
Big win for the community, which of course you're a part of. What are your thoughts in the Litecoin community in 2025?
Okay. Before I go into my thoughts on Litecoin community, I just want to piggyback off of what you said.
Mm-hmm.
I generally like to say Litecoin is not a Bitcoin fork, not because we're not a code fork, but because I understand why people say Litecoin is a Bitcoin fork. I understand the intention behind the statement. So I just go, we're not a fork. Because I know it's one of those things where they just want to write it off. It's the same with opals bring bad luck. And now people don't want to wear opals, right? Oh, Litecoin is just a fork. I don't want it, right? Litecoin is not a fork. Now, you should be the one to come tell me, oh, it's a code fork. Well, that's good. But what I'm just going to say is Litecoin is a fork. Be the one to correct me. I don't want you to throw me that signal, that stigma at Litecoin. And so my thoughts about Litecoin community, one thing I appreciate most about this community is it's a community of, just a rich diversity of people, right? We have every single religion, every single ideology, every single, position of life is just every single person is with their own independent thought, right? And there's a lot of difficult discourse that is happening within the community that like just doesn't happen in other communities that I see. Like there's a whole cult mentality, right, that happens with a lot of projects. And what I see happening in the Litecoin community is more, it's respectful discourse, it's rich, it's mature, and it is something that is, it's very natural and it's very welcoming for someone like me who loves to be challenged. I love my ideas being challenged. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong, and I love learning. And there's just a whole lot of all of this conversations happening within the community, and I love it. And I love the fact that Litecoin community is the most resilient community in all of crypto. Everybody should fear Litecoiners. Everybody should fear Litecoiners. If amongst the things you fear most in life, Litecoiners should be somewhere among the top 3, top 5, because for someone to root for Litecoin since 2017, lots of people that are here have been here since 2017. lots of FOMO cycles, all of these happen, and they did not deviate from the main, the core ideologies that they understand about Litecoin. For someone to be able to do that, you should understand that you should be afraid of this person, because this is an absolute giga chat, right? This is someone who is as resilient as they come. And, I salute everybody who's been holding Litecoin for much, much longer than I am. I mean, massive props to you, Kyle. You've been doing this for as long as I know. I saw your page in 2021, but I just didn't, I wasn't looking into Litecoin, and, it was very easy for me to recognize your page, when I started making Litecoin videos. So, like, you were one of the first people I followed, and I really love you. And Why Litecoin, shout out to Why Litecoin as well. I watch a lot of his content, very long that I just wash the dishes when I'm listening, you know, and, it really helps around so yeah, beautiful community, beautiful, every single thing. It feels real, it feels like an active conversation. And, a mature, an active, mature conversation that's always going on. And, there's resilience, there's passion, and I deeply appreciate it. It feels like a real community, not just a couple of people who are coming to play pretend because they want to pump the numbers up.
So yes, and speaking of religions, we could talk about Bitcoin maximalism, and in contrast with the Litecoin community. Although there is some Litecoin maximalism. I know folks that are Litecoin maximalists. You could have other people that are script maximalists, but anyway, we're borrowing the language of maximalists. But let's look at the Bitcoin maximalists. You've made a few comments about them in some of your videos. Give us a summary of what your chief complaints are, and maybe how the Litecoin community is different, or how we can answer all of their so-called invincible arguments.
So the thing I noticed about Bitcoin maximalism is the first time I heard the arguments of Bitcoin maximalists, I heard it from Benjamin Cohen. And Benjamin Cohen is not a traditional maxi that has technical reasons behind his maximalism, but he just looks at it as, Bitcoin has been overperforming and has been retaining most of its value. So Bitcoin is, the go-to allocation for everybody. And that's his arguments. And, the thing I do not appreciate about that argument, it's because of its assumption of perpetuity. And I feel like Ben falls in this category of people who just look at, we've been here only 15 years or so, and you already assume that this trend that Bitcoin has put up for us, for so long will continue to happen into the future. So you're pretty much telling me that Bitcoin will continue to go to 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, and nothing else will significantly gain market share and hold on to it over the next, decades. And that just does not make sense, because no asset class works like that. No commodity or asset just works like that. They're gonna be cycles when we're gonna have other things that start to significantly outperform and hold on to that market share. And Litecoin is one of the core things I believe. And that's why I stated earlier that Litecoin is going to be actively traded directly against Bitcoin and not against, other things, right? And that's what gives it a very long shot, high probability of getting to a very high valuation. And so that argument of maximalism, that's my problem with it, is just its assumption to perpetuity. But I sort of get it, right? But the arguments of maximalism that I don't even understand are the technical ones, because proof of work maximalism makes sense. Anything that is not proof of work, you do not respect. I get it. Proof of stake maximalism, I get it. But you can't look at all the proof of works and go, no, I maximalize this one. Why? This one.
The immaculate conception.
Why that one? Immaculate conception is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. You have this man sitting on 1 million Bitcoins, and we all just hold the assumption that he is never gonna sell. This is my problem with this space. There are way too many people that assume permanence way too quickly. Satoshi hasn't sold in 15 years. Bitcoin will still be here for the next how many years? Charlie has sold. He's out. He's out of it. The supply is in our hands. How would you not respect that over a probability that this immaculate guy will not sell?
Bitcoin is hope.
I don't. You said what?
Bitcoin is hope.
Sometimes when I hear these things, I just like shake my head. I'm someone who I'm moved by logical arguments, and like I engage in a lots of like arguments because like I want people to change my mind. But you can't throw immaculate conception at me. I'm sorry. I cannot respect someone coming at me with Bitcoin's immaculate conception as something that like gives it a technical advantage over something like Litecoin. I understand fair distribution. I understand decentralization. I understand like proof of work. I understand you can talk about adoption. I feel like they do their little graph and they try to like see how they can make a Bitcoin only argument off of these things. And when they're done, they see that their answer is Bitcoin and Litecoin, and they go, no, Bitcoin only. Yeah, we're gonna ignore the other one because like why? And it's very strange, and it makes me very confident that it's two ways for us. We either die. I don't know if that's too powerful or strong of a language. So we either die, or we go so hard that all of these people who have pretended, because it's a pretense, right? It's a pretense like we are not doing all these things. So it's either we die or we go so hard that they get forced to like, cover their face in shame, because it's ridiculous that these people continue to perpetuate these ideas when all the technical arguments do not support it. So that's my general take on Bitcoin maximalism. I understand the financial aspect of it. I do not agree with it because it often extends to perpetuity, which nobody can know. But the technical part, there's just no technical argument that can support a Bitcoin only position.
I like it. NFTs, runes, ordinals, second layers, Bitcoin computer, LitVM. What are your thoughts on all of the non-monetary uses of Litecoin?
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things. That's one thing is I'm going to admit I'm not very knowledgeable about like how NFTs work on Litecoin, because I have a lot of things that I want to do. And by the way, I want to make a little show that I'm doing, and I want to just learn more and more and more, because I learned a lot by conversations, right? And one thing I love the most about NFTs is because having being able to do all these things on Litecoin, you have to have I don't know if I'm being correct when I say that the NFTs on Litecoin are stored as native assets and not smart contracts.
Correct in terms of ordinal inscriptions.
Exactly. And I feel like the ordinal inscriptions, like when you have things that are being stored as native assets, then you do not run the risk of getting them taken off your hands just because you signed off something that you didn't properly review. And that's something that I value a lot about having things being put as native assets. And like, yeah, if we can find a way to like grow the NFTs and ordinals and runes and this other non-monetary use of Litecoin, it's going to be very great, because the fact that we are so stable and we have such solid foundation gives us this competitive edge of being able to like gradually usurp this niche as the flashy stuffs continue to come and go and comes and go, and like more and more people continue to just come do it here before we become the norm. I think that's what we did with payments, right? All the flashy payment they came when, and we just continued growing, and our stability continued to bring more and more people. So we can do the same magic in other aspects, and I feel like we really will see lasting success. And these are the things that institutions love. The institutions, they're not really fans of surprises. And when something is really working well, a lot of them are also gonna come utilize this thing. And it's good. It's very great for broader adoption, and I really appreciate them.
Good words. I think there's a lot more coming. I think we're going to have a resurgence of ordinals and kind of blockchain art on Litecoin. I think LitVM and what they're doing with multi-chaining and things also is going to expand those use cases. So I'm interested to learn kind of where we're going and where we end up, because there's just been a lot of movement in the last year, and it's not stopping.
Same.
So It's been good having you. Before we end the show, what did we not discuss that you have it on you burning up that you got to share with us? Anything?
I don't know where this podcast is going to go, but I'm just going to say this. I have one mission in Litecoin, and the mission is simple. Oh, two. One, I'm going to make Litecoin cool again in my little way, right? I know that I'm not the only person. It's a community effort, but like in my little way, I'm going to make Litecoin more cool again. We're all trying to make Litecoin cool again in our ways, but I'm going to do my own part to like achieving that. And number two, I'm going to make sure that I do my best in building the next generation Litecoin community, aka the Gen Z community of Litecoin, because I feel like we're about to go on another, upwards momentum. And I want to be able to like provide some sort of like infrastructure. I use that very loosely to capture this new community that is coming in a way that, they can find things exciting enough for them to like stay and like see this as like more culturally relevant to them, as well as like deeply understand what it is about. And that is what I'm really trying to build. And I'm trying to build systems that like cut across so many. I want it to grab attention, grab people from all around the whole crypto space, and for all of the new attention we're gonna get when crypto begins its expansion. I want to grab all that and I want to funnel it back to this space, and I want to do my best to like build this sort of like Bitcoin culture in my little way on the space. So help me God. I don't know if it's 1,000, 100,000, if it's 1,000,000 people. I'm gonna make sure they see Litecoin, as the valuable store, stable store of value it is, and as this asset that we really can trust to protect our purchasing power and to sort of like help us to achieve, help us beat inflation and help us, help us grow, financially. I don't want to use the word number go up. So I'm trying to be very selective of my language. And like, I feel like a lot of people are very convinced right now that like, this is the end game of crypto. And like, we have a lot of people who have that end game mentality and are like, okay, you know what? I'm going to sell my Litecoins when we get to these valuations. I'm going to sell this my coin when we get to the valuation. I'm going to be out. And I feel because we're seeing a prevailing number of these people, if we're going to get to those valuations, then there's much better things ahead. And I believe now more than ever that if there's any time to round trip Litecoin, now is the time for me. It's just my personal opinion. I'm here till diminishing return hits. And I believe like the idea of the end game mentality, is a very big indicator that if we're eventually going to get to those valuations, that these people feel like that's the end for them, then, there's much better things coming in the horizon. And because I am in a third world country where the currency continues to get devalued, and like inflation is a real thing that I see, it's not this fancy concept that I have to back test for 5 years to like materialize, right? I go to the market today. I'm trying to get a bag of beans. It's 35,000 naira. Maybe I'm bored. I don't want to, maybe I feel like I can't carry it. So I'm going to come tomorrow. I come tomorrow, it's 38,000 naira. That's 3,000 naira extra. Why? Inflation, and it's not going down. So because I understand this and I understand that I have to protect the value of my assets, protect the value of my money, I don't mind seeing the wide fluctuations because I understand we're going to continue to expand and contract and expand and contract. But again, the best investors are the ones that do nothing, right? And as long as I understand the value prop, I'll just continue to stack and use and stack and use and continue to, just grow in this space and, protect my, my purchasing power, the value of my money until, when it becomes boring and when everybody knows, oh yeah, it's Bitcoin and Litecoin, and it just becomes like this everyday thing that everyone knows. And, maybe then they will understand that the wild things I'm saying right now are not so wild anyways.
Well, keep it up. Keep up the content. We appreciate you in the community. We're glad that you've gotten very much involved. And to all of our listeners, we thank you for tuning in today to this episode number 46 with Raphael or FlippiFi. Flippin Finance is on X. Of course, follow him. In terms of where to find us, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on X. Go to 84million.com/podcast for all of our episodes, this one and all of the ones that came before it. So we thank you for all of you guys for tuning in today.
Can I say something?
Yes.
My alt season tour is coming. Can I invite you to one of the episodes?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a live stream, and like I'm gonna be doing a light hour after it, so it's two. Sorry, I don't know if this is inappropriate, but like it's two. It's one. The first one is the alt season tour, where I get to like talk about any project, and like at the end after it, then it's the next one. It's the light hour. So it's almost like anyone who stays from the new attention we're getting, they're gonna come join us at the light hour. And the light hour is the like Litecoin based, Litecoin only, show. And like I would really love to have like some of the best people that represent the space on it, so we can like, get these people who are, who just came for their own project to stay and actually watch and learn about Litecoin in the light hour. So I don't know if you're up for that. You're very much invited.
So we'll have to stay posted and watch also Raphael, what he puts out in terms of the light hour. More will be revealed. But again, thank you, sir, for coming on the show. Thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you supporting yet another episode of the 84 Million Podcast. See you later, sir. Thank you. Be well.